19th of October, and it's a Let's Go Brandon Wednesday. And with me here is our Wednesday regular co-host, Don Anderson. Don,
Happy
happy
to be here.
Wednesday. Yeah,
Happy to be here. Let's go, Brandon.
that's right. I mean, even Joe Biden said, "Let's go, Brandon," much to the consternation of his wife, who isn't as cognitively impaired as Joe is. But yeah, we've got a great show here tonight. We've also got coming up at 6:30 the final gubernatorial debate here in Oregon. So we're going to try to keep this nice and lean and efficient for all of you. But also we're going to cover the important stuff that you need to know in order to make the most out of this election cycle. So let's start out with what I call the opening laugh. And what I mean by opening laugh is we've already had a laugh, but this one, there's just too much humor in this one, I believe. So if all of you are sort of watching what's going on in other states, there's another important gubernatorial race happening in Arizona. And it's a real contrast between Kari Lake, a former television news anchor who is definitely endorsed by Donald Trump, a strong Trump supporter, but also very articulate, so articulate that the opponent there, Katie Hobbs, who is the current Secretary of State overseeing Arizona's election system, you know, the sketchy system that did what it did in 2020. And she's afraid to debate Kari Lake. She's running away from debates. She'll only talk to news anchors. And it's amazing that the race is even close. But then this happened. Here's the headline. In black eye for Katie Hobbs, the Democrat, Arizona mails thousands of incorrect ballots. They mailed incorrect ballots out to everyone. And yeah, it's here's what when you read the details of this, as with most things that even on the surface sound pretty hard to believe, it is worse than that. Here's the story. A spokesman, let me just paste this into the feed so all of you can watch it. A spokesman for the Secretary of State's office said the driver's license query failed to properly verify the citizenship for some people, resulting in them being improperly registered as federal-only voters, according to the wire service that reported this spokesperson's statement. When I read that, that's even worse. I started reading the details of this, and it's like, so not only are these the people who are telling us, no, don't worry about, you know, illegal immigrants and all kinds of people getting driver's licenses and then getting to vote. That can't happen. And then not only do they send out a bunch of incorrect ballots, but they send them to people who can't seem to get verified as actually being citizens.
You can't make it up. I mean, you know, she doesn't need to have any ads. Just like, you know, post their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Katie Hobbs is not only running ads for herself and against Kari Lake, she's also running negative ads against herself by just being in the news, running away from debates, and then Secretary of State overseeing the election she's actually running for governor in mails out ballots because they can't verify the citizenship of people that have gotten somehow onto the voter rolls. And I've read into you don't even want to, why federal only? Why are they voting? Why is somebody who's not a citizen voting in a federal election? Turns out that Arizona law does not allow them to vote in Arizona elections. So what they do is if they can't verify their citizenship, then they still send them a ballot to vote in a federal election. No, it's like,
this has got to be
everything's fine with the voting system in Oregon. In Arizona, because don't you worry your pretty little heads in the presidential race or these congressional races or the U.S. Senate race. There are no non-citizens voting in that, but we're going to send them ballots anyway.
You know, it's got to be the easiest job in the world to be an advertising firm for Republicans this year. It's the easiest job in the world. You just like point out what they've done. You don't have to do anything except point out if you want more of the same, like this, then keep voting for the same stuff. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, you just take their statements on the public record or their spokesperson statements or spokes idiot statements, I guess you could say. And then you just put that out there and like, look at this. It's a negative ad all by itself. No production needed. This is quite a special moment. But hey, let's move on to Oregon where some real action is at here, because there's a lot that's happened here in the past few days. And in fact, last night was a fantastic evening. I got to attend this, and it was a special moment because we haven't really had rallies like this in Oregon. And last night, down in Aurora, which is south of Wilsonville, the Virginia governor, who was elected in 2021 against the odds, he was down like 10 percentage points just about a month or something out from the election. And then as the "Let's Go Brandon" cheers started going and people started getting sick of Terry McAuliffe, who apparently doesn't want parents to be involved in education at all because they're not qualified, started closing in the polls with Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat. And this Virginia governor, Glenn Youngkin, got elected in what began, that must be like in a tsunami, there's like a little bit of a wave and then it just builds and builds and builds. That was the wave at the beginning of the red wave in November of 2021. He came to Oregon last night to lead a rally for Christine Drazan, who, as we know, appears to be having the upper hand, at least in the latest polling, against Tina Kotek, who is a dumpster fire of a candidate in this state. And Glenn Youngkin really had some fantastic stuff to say. And he actually, one of the statements he had, I thought stood out to me. He said that, and I'm going to try to paste this into the feed for everyone too. But he said that the Democrats are really the purveyors of chaos. And if you look at what's happened in Oregon, they've fulfilled that. That's not an inaccurate statement. Glenn Youngkin just merely pointed out what's happening and then pointed out the unmistakable parallels to what we've seen in a state which is considered blue, but not even as blue as Oregon, considering that they've had Republican governors in recent decades in Virginia. But now it looks like we might be starting to see a shift in Oregon. And it was a great event. There must have been 1,000 people there. And I can't remember, it's been 18 years since the last time I've been at such a rally here in Oregon for a Republican gubernatorial candidate, at least that long, or any candidate here in the Beaver State. And so I think people are starting to feel like the energy is building. It really capped off a moment that you could say is symbolized what's happened. People are optimistic. They're beginning to feel that there's hope. And Glenn Youngkin did a great job at rallying everyone. He is like an Energizer bunny. Like he just kept going and going and going. And he gave Christine one of these famous Youngkin vests that he wears on the campaign trail, these red vests. Mm-hmm. He gave her one of those, and there were some high fives. And clearly, people feel like we're heading strong into these last few weeks of the election.
Well, that's really good to hear. It's one of the difficult things where the media is the way they are out here. Unless you're in a scenario where you're on the ground with people who are thinking like yourself, you would think that you are in the complete minority and that it's an impossible situation. But it's only when you get around other people, you begin to realize that there are a lot of people that think exactly like you, and they realize that this is a disaster and it's got to change. And I think people who were previously voting Democrat are those middle of the road types are looking at what's happening in the street. You don't have to be an intellectual giant to realize this is a direct result of their policies. And they're the ones who've been in power. If you coach a football team and you're like, you're winning 2 out of 12 games, guess what? After about 2 or 3 years, what happens? You move on. And that's what the voters need to do. And I think we've reached that point where it's unavoidable. It will not change with these people.
Yeah. they've gone 0-11 this fall. And it's time to say we got to switch the coach. It's time to move on and try almost anything else. And that's what we've gotten from Kotek, Kotek and Kate Brown. I mean, Tina Kotek was the wing gal for the least popular governor in the United States. She's trying to make it sound now in some of her public pronouncements, Tina Kotek, is that, she's very critical of Kate Brown, and she thinks that we need to clean house at OHA, and, that Kate Brown was absent from leadership and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh, well, you know what? You know who could do something about that? The Speaker of the House, who wields enormous power, could say, we're passing this, governor, sign it. We'll declare a homelessness emergency, sign it. The Speaker of the House literally can push any legislation through that she wants, including spending and tax bills, because they're in the super majority, and those things have to start in the House of Representatives. And the Speaker of the House could also say to a committee chair, like, we need to hold hearings, and we need to hear what's going on, and we need to ask tough questions about these people that are supposed to be doing their jobs, working for Kate Brown. Didn't do any of that.
No.
And I like what Marjorie just said here. Where's Kate Brown now? Well, let me tell you where she is. She is. We're going to come to that in the next item here. What she is doing quietly behind the scenes while the rest of us are paying attention to who might be the next governor. She's busy doing some damage. But here's something that you need to see. It's a really good ad by Crime Victims United, and it makes clear by a rape victim that Tina Kotek won't protect crime victims. Very good ad. It totally shreds Tina Kotek, and it makes very clear that what's coming for for the state of Oregon, if Tina Kotek were to get elected, is worse than what we've seen from Kate Brown. Tina's a true believer. She thinks that we needed to make it easier for Kate Brown to do these clemencies where she just lets criminals out on the street. And in fact, Tina Kotek was one of the people who stood by and prevented any effort to change what had been put into law that made it possible for a guy who's a 6-time rapist to be classified a low-risk sex offender and get out of jail here soon. Which this is I think it was the jogger rapist is what he was called, and it's pretty shocking. His name, let's see here. Well, and here's actually a good article about it in addition to the video, because I recommend everybody watch the ad. But then you can read this article, which describes how there was a legislative fix that could have been made to the sex offender program here in the state, so that it wouldn't be possible for somebody who had repeatedly had been convicted of repeated rapes, and now he's going to be released from prison. Let's see his name. I'm trying to recall here. Got a couple of different articles that describe him, if it'll come up on my screen. And this is a guy who, after doing that to so many different women, Richard Gilmore, the famous jogger rapist, admitted to raping 9 girls in the Portland area in 1970s and 80s, but was only convicted in one case because of statute of limitations. Efforts to fix the statute of limitations blocked. Efforts to prevent people from being classified as low-risk sex offenders blocked. And so this is really something. It's hard for victims to step up and say this, but the ad is powerful, and I recommend you share it with everybody, because there's only one candidate running for governor who can prevent Tina Kotek from becoming governor, and that's Christine Drazan.
Yeah, they just don't want to enforce the law. I mean, there's just at every turn they make it more difficult for law enforcement to do its job. We don't even have to talk about this whole thing with reducing, making it easier for drugs to be on the street. It's just incredible. It just gets worse and worse. Um, yeah, it speaks for itself.
But it can be fixed. We can
Yes.
change who's leading the state, and this is a golden opportunity, a historic opportunity, and we've got to seize it. There's another reason why we have to seize that opportunity, a really important reason, and one that, frankly, if you so apparently just yesterday afternoon, the Oregon Supreme Court Chief Justice, uh, who has been serving for 16 years on the bench here in Oregon, has announced that she is, yes, you guessed it, retiring at the end of the year. And what does that mean if she retires by the end of the year? Well, Kate Brown gets to appoint her replacement, the least popular governor in the United States, who's appointed or will have appointed nearly the entire court by that point. Because if you're getting deja vu all over again, Thomas Balmer, who has been serving, I think, at least 12 years on the Oregon Supreme Court, also decided to retire. And you know why they're retiring? Because they're scared that apparently a Democrat might not be elected in the governor's race this fall. So all the cockroaches are scurrying when you lift yes, I just referred to judges as potentially cockroaches. Okay, fair enough.
Well, that was about as nice a thing as you could said, given the behavior of these guys.
Given this collusion, this effort to exploit the system where it was supposed to be an exception, right? An exception that you would have to appoint somebody to complete a term. It is the rule. And when you look at the Oregon State Supreme Court, it
Was
will be.
Was any of them elected? Were any of them elected?
Well, I don't think that I don't know if any of them were elected as an open seat race. I can't recall. There have been open seat races or challenges in the past, but the big problem here is once they retire and they get filled by the governor, then they're the incumbent. It's very hard to defeat an incumbent. They actually, unlike other offices, get a little I next to their name on the ballot, which gives them an immediate advantage, apparently. And so if they even draw an opponent, that opponent has an uphill struggle. And of course, the people that are being appointed, if Democrats have been running the state for 40 years, from Mahoning Hall, then they are going to be representing one point of view, a monolithic point of view. And we know that when Vance Day ran for appeals court, one court level down, that's a tough uphill struggle to fight that. He did it to prove that we should do it. And actually made headway in some counties here in the state, which I think by having an alternative, they started to say we could have a choice. But the whole thing was supposed to be under the Oregon Constitution, the people were supposed to be choosing their judges, not the politicians, certainly not the least popular governor in the United States. And so she's retiring. The gravy train continues. Watch out for who she appoints, because then she's going to get to appoint probably two, because she'll appoint somebody from a lower court, probably the appeals court, to the higher court, and somebody from the appeals court, probably somebody she appointed there. So she's going to promote them again. And then she's going to get to fill the appeals court position with somebody that she wants, probably from the circuit court. Now, maybe that'll open up a circuit court position, which she will also fill. That's the whole game. It's like a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
And we are the victims of it because we don't really have a justice system anymore that certainly pays attention to the Constitution or the law. We need to change it.
Yeah.
So I think we had the question earlier, what is Kate Brown doing? She's busily appointing Supreme Court justices so that we can have no justice system whatsoever. And behind the scenes, she's also releasing criminals out into the streets, thanks to the decision by the appellate court that rubber stamped her, what I think is still an unconstitutional and illegal abuse of the victims' rights provisions in our Constitution and our statutes, and that the state Supreme Court, the same place these two guys are resigning from, refused to hear the appeal. So this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So we need to elect a new governor to at least start to change this, and then we need to reform this system so it's not the system anymore, right?
No, yeah, that system can't continue. I mean, it's just it's just been abused, and we've seen what that abuse is. So I'm not sure what that change would look like, but clearly there's got to be a system in place where they just can't select who they want.
That should restore the intention of the state constitution that this is supposed to be decided by the people of Oregon, that we are supposed to have more say than say we have at the federal level, and who actually presides in our court system and what judicial philosophy prevails. And we've got a chance to do that on two levels. We've got to elect people to the state legislature, and we've also got to elect a Republican governor in Christine Drazan. Well, so like I said, that's going to be two out of 7 state Supreme Court justices. Kate Brown is going to name, and she named all the others. So there you go. It's a Kate Brown court. How does that make you feel?
Pretty yucky.
Yeah, pretty yucky. I think that is about the best set of adjectives and the kindest ones that I think I can find. Well, let's give a quick update on what's going on with the congressional races, because there's a lot happening there. So in the 4th congressional district, that's the district that Peter DeFazio retired from.
Mm-hmm.
We have Val Hoyle, who's the Bureau of Labor and Industry and former state senator head, and she's running against Alex Skarlatos, the Republican who ran against Peter DeFazio, who retired after 18 terms in Congress, to go and, I guess, ride off into the sunset. Or,
well, there's a silver lining. At least he's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And given how little he did for our transportation as transportation chair in the House, I don't think he's going to be riding on any of our roadways. Yeah.
Or the transit system he created.
Yeah. Exactly. So this article here kind of summarizes what's going on, says that they don't think that, they're kind of fretting over the fact that Peter DeFazio retired because they thought it'd be easier to hold on to the seat. But actually, he only won with 51.5% of the vote back in 2020. It was only a 5% margin that he won by. And so it was a close race against Alex Skarlatos last time. Alex Skarlatos has raised twice the money of Val Hoyle. But the Democrats, of course, have been focused on redistricting, which they gerrymandered thanks to Tina Kotek, right? The one who double-crossed Christine Drazan. That one's not helping Tina in this race. Nobody trusts her. Not even people on her side can trust her. And it's fascinating because this seems to be the only thing that might keep this race in the grasp of the Democrats in the 4th district, is that they made it slightly more Democratic in redistricting. However, that's not been helping some of these other districts, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this is there are typically the concerns people have in the 4th district about inflation, cost of living, economic vitality, because that's been a depressed area, opioids, crime, homelessness, you name it. So
you can't run away from that stuff. It's right in your. It's nothing theoretical about needles in your parks and playgrounds. About your kids in school being taught, how to hate each other, about massive unemployment and gas prices and inflation. This stuff's in your face every day. And there's just no getting around it for them. I think, quite frankly, the reason that Peter DeFazio is leaving because of the timing is good for him to leave. I think he knew that this was a fight he wasn't going to win. Just my opinion.
That's possible. Although Democrats are, gnashing their teeth that maybe there's still a chance they could lose this seat without an incumbent in it, because incumbents tend to be pretty successful. Val Hoyle, of course, wants to make sure that all your gas prices go up, and that she wants to tax people making $31,000 a year, and helps big drug companies because they give her money. So she's really super awesome and sweet.
Yeah. Those rich people making 31 grand, I'm telling you.
Exactly. Just for the working class, the working class, 6-figure working class. Yeah. Anyway, other race, 5th district, which is Lori Chavez Dreamer, the Republican former mayor of Happy Valley, running against the ne'er-do-well Jamie McLeod Skinner, who's been running constantly since she carpetbagged into Oregon about 6 or 7 years ago from Santa Clara, California, and she's been trying to convince everybody that she's an authentic Oregonian with Oregon values, and that she's great at emergency preparedness, I guess. Well,
you
anyway,
live in San Francisco, you should be good at that.
you need to be when the Democrats are the ones creating all the emergencies, right?
Maybe she has a point.
However, this is a race where it looks like it might be starting to tilt in the Republican favor. They're running a ton of negative ads attacking Lori Chavez DeRemer. I don't think it's going to work. Jamie McLeod Skinner is somebody who's running from the title progressive, even though has been and is an acolyte and strong supporter of Bernie Sanders, who you can't use another word other than progressive or socialist to describe him. Yeah. And so it looks like this is getting some national attention. Good. I think that means that in terms of national attention, we can count on hearing even more about where this goes, because I think we have the upper hand in this race, and I believe Lori Chavez DeRemer can win. We just got to support her all the way through the finish line. And the last race that we wanted to mention is the 6th congressional district. That is the new district that's been drawn. It was supposed to be greatly to the advantage. I think Joe Biden won it by either 11 or 14 percentage points, that district in 2020, because they can figure out if the district had existed in 2020 before redistricting, what the vote would look like. Apparently, this one is considered a toss-up. Might even be heading in our direction. Andrea Salinas is the Democrat. She's a far-left state representative. His only claim to fame is that she is the daughter of a police officer who I think she's disgraced with her votes in the state house against law enforcement and criminal justice prevailing, and but she is running tons of negative ads. The problem with her ads is that one of them has been revealed to be a lie. And I know it always takes the liberal media time to catch up on this stuff. Well, they did catch up. They caught up, and KGW, which, Pat Dorris is a pretty fair reporter. KGW, not always favorable to Republican. Well, certainly not. I don't know if anybody is, but Pat Dorris is on this article, and they fact check the ad that Andrea Salinas is running over and over, claiming that Mike Erickson is a drug user and that he was charged with drug possession, 1 tablet of hydrocodone, which is a prescription drug for which his wife had a prescription, and that it was in his car at the time. And so she's been running constant ads about this. She stands by the ads, but unfortunately, KGW has found that this ad is quote unquote misleading. That's what the media says when someone's a liar. And they don't usually call them a liar. They only save that for when they say that about Republicans.
Yeah, that's what they save it for.
That's right. But it looks like she's kind of blown herself up with this one. At least she's running a completely false ad. And she's also facing a lawsuit because apparently you're not supposed to lie in your ads. But if you're a Democrat, they will still let you run those lies on TV.
And, I just don't think, that negative ads long-term are going to get the job done. Eventually, you got to say what you're going to do. And slinging mud is not going to get it done, particularly when the results of your policies are evident visually all around us. I mean, I keep going back to that. You can literally get in a car, put a camera out the window and drive down the street, and that will be your anti-Democrat Party ad. No matter who the candidate is.
And they can't run on the stuff that they've been doing to the state or the votes that she's taken. They can't do that. So they have to do this stuff. Why don't we, we've covered Oregon stuff here, and I think that's probably what we should stick with tonight. So why don't we just wrap up here with the State House update? So here's a fascinating story for you. a drug dealing kidnapper who named R.J. Navarro, convicted felon R.J. Navarro, is apparently the the criminal record and unlawful actions that he has been convicted of. It's getting longer. So here's the list. He's running for House District 21 against former state representative, former Republican Party chair, and gubernatorial candidate Kevin Mannix, who is actually on the opposite end of the scale. He is the guy who wrote the laws that put guys like R.J. Navarro in jail. And it turns out that this list of convictions: illegal drug possession, first-degree child neglect, violated a restraining order, parole violation, jailed 5 to 6 different times, driving on a suspended license, and well, there's even more. But it turns out that none of the Democrats who have endorsed him have withdrawn their endorsements of him, including Tina Kotek. And you can see in this article that it shows the picture of her standing with him, and she stood by her endorsement because this is the kind of candidate they want: as many drug dealing kidnappers driving on suspended licenses to get into the state legislature as possible, so they can help Tina with her agenda, which is to put criminals as the victims and the crime victims as collateral damage to be forgotten.
Well,
And Val Hoyle is running for the Bureau of Labor and Industry Commissioner, running for 4th Congressional District. Also endorsed him. Also her picture with him in this article.
His only crime as a Democrat is he got caught.
Yeah.
That's his only crime.
Democrats don't care about that, apparently.
They don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah. No, this is Crazyville. This is the guy who it just keeps getting worse for him, that people keep finding out more and more about him. And yet Democrats, unapologetic, they think this is super awesome. And I think that they should stay that way. Keep their endorsements with them. Damage all the Democrats that don't seem to understand that voters don't want to elect former felons in the middle of a crime wave to help make the laws in the state.
Imagine that.
Now, here's something else that's really interesting too. So there's some races that I think are on the periphery that we got to pay attention to. I think Alan Stout is running against. Let's see. There's a debate between Alan Stout and John Lively. Which is fascinating because this is in House District 7, and Democrats outnumber Republicans by 4,600 voters in that district. But look, I mean, we're fighting for every one of these races, and it was a debate that took place at the Springfield City Club Forum, and you should take a look at it because they kind of talk about what's going on, and I think maybe Stout has a chance, because Lively, you got to take Stout over Lively. I mean, just based on the name, because Lively kind of looks, like freaky, like whoo, while Stout looks like he is steadfast and firm and is going to actually deliver results. And I think that's something we want to see. I'll post a link to this, and everybody, if you're in the area at House District 7, Springfield, Oregon area, please take note. And then here's another race: Kramer versus Medina. First read, I'm like, Kramer versus Kramer. No, that's 1970. Yeah. Kramer versus Medina in House District 22. And I got to tell you, Tracy Kramer, excellent candidate. There, you could see this article did everything they could to make Anthony Medina sound good. But Tracy Kramer is a heck of a candidate, really smart. She's a wife, mother, and small business owner. She is not a politician, which means that she might show up there and actually have some common sense and try to make some stuff happen that hasn't been happening. Meanwhile, Anthony Medina comes from a farm worker background, low income, made a good livelihood of himself, but he's got a bachelor's degree in public policy and administration. He's been climbing the ladder here within the governmental aristocracy of the Democrat Party, and he wants to see more of what we've been doing to the state happen. So please take note, because you got to let people let people know about Tracy. I think this is a sleeper race. I like our chances. I really do. I think it could be an opportunity to finally get some common sense in House District 22. And lastly, when it comes to the issues of what's going on with the state legislature, it turns out in the state Senate, we're only 3 seats away from tying in the 15-15 in that chamber, which means that the Senate presidency would be kind of a split thing.
In Oregon. Wow.
We would have half a gavel. We could stop legislation. We could get stuff to the floor and get it voted on. And, I think that there's a chance that it's still win, place, or show. I'd say it's win or place that we've got a chance at to tie. A crazy opportunity to maybe even eke out one more seat and win. But this article takes into some more detail that we could actually send Christine Drazan to the governorship with a state Senate that might actually be tied or even Republican. Wow. One election.
That would be amazing. Well, they have done this to themselves. We need to make sure that they, all we have to do is just make it clear to everyone what they've done to themselves. Although I don't see how you could be any clearer just by, again, driving down the street. But this might be a bellwether year. I mean, you hate to have too much hyperbole in these kinds of things, but I think when you look at this polling data, I think we talked about this before. I think there's at least 5 points off, because people won't say what they really think because they know what the media thinks of them when they say it. So, we'll see what happens, but I think it's true locally, and I think it's true nationally. I think we're going to see quite a landslide.
Yeah, and I think so. Some of the people that we need to look at here, we got to make sure Bill Kinnemer gets enough support. We need Carolina Malmadal in District 15 in Hillsborough. Raquel Moore Green, we've had her on this show, running in District 10 against Democrat Deb Patterson. We've got Kim Thatcher, who is running in a tougher redrawn Senate District 13. But I think she could eke it out, but she's going to need our support and our donations. We've got Betsy Johnson's old seat, I think, will definitely be won by Suzanne Weber, who's a state representative right now. Daniel Bonham, I think, is the odds-on guy to win in District 26, the Columbia Gorge area. And then Cedric Hayden downstate, I think, can actually win his district. And those are some victories that we could prevail in and make a huge difference.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. We ended on good news, Don. Why don't we wrap up on good news, and then we can always talk about some of the crazy stuff they said on The View, or Joe Biden's family stories. That'll be still a good story on Friday, so we'll save it for then. And let everyone go and tune in now to the gubernatorial debate that's just started.
That's right. That'll be great. Looking forward to seeing that. And keep the faith, stay positive. I'm pretty. It's easy to look at everything and get down and negative, but the reality is people had to get knocked over the head to see just how atrocious the Democratic Party has been, and they've shown us that. And now it's time to make that change. So
yeah, districts that Joe Biden won handily look like they could go to Republicans. That says a lot, and that means that everybody's got to do what they can. In fact, please, everybody, consider writing even a small check to the campaigns we mentioned and to Christine Drazan. We've got to make sure they have enough fuel in the tank to get all the way to run through the tape, as Christine said the other day, right at the end of the race. We got to run through the tape. And then the rest of us are going to make sure that we're going to keep our eyes on those elections offices and make sure they comply with the law there too. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Don, thanks for being on with me tonight.
It's always fun. Looking forward to it every week.
It was a blast. Let's go, Brandon Wednesday. It continues. So everyone go and take a look at the gubernatorial debate. I think it's on KGW, if I recall. Check it out, and we will see you on Friday on the next episode of The Captive Audience. Share this show with everyone you can. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.